anti-Semitism bad? We'll be answering that question today on the show, as well as discussing the conservative renaissance on the horizon, and later sitting down with a Democrat and getting his take on unions and transgenderism in sports. That's all happening today on the Woke is Broke podcast. Hello, and thank you for tuning into the Woke is Broke podcast. Our top stories today: anti-Semitism seems to be on the rise. We've seen outbreaks in LA, New York, all across the country really. Governor Cuomo himself having recently ordered police patrols to be increased around synagogues, Jewish schools, and community centers. But what's it stemming from, you might ask? Why are these attacks increasing? Well, if like me, maybe you never really delved into foreign politics, foreign affairs, what one country across the ocean is doing to another country, so to speak. And if that's the case, maybe you're not well acquainted with what's going on in Israel right now, specifically what's going on between Israel and Palestine. I know it's been in the news for a number of weeks with a certain slant, for sure, that could make it easy to misunderstand exactly what's going on at any given moment. All we hear about is Israel being an apartheid state. We hear about the death toll count due to the armed conflict between Israel and Palestine right now. Right? This article from the Business Insider makes it perfectly clear what the death toll count is. At least 232 Palestinians were killed and more than 1,900 were wounded in Gaza during the 11-day conflict, which calmed down on Friday after a ceasefire took effect. Around 72,000 people, mainly in Gaza, were displaced. 12 Israelis were also killed. But when you start to dig into the facts, you realize that there is another way to read those casualties. And it's not, pardon me, it sounds something like this. After the democratically elected leadership of Palestine, known as Hamas, an outright terrorist organization who routinely advocates for the genocide of Jews, launched thousands of missiles into heavily populated civilian areas of Israel in an unprovoked act of aggression, Israel responded. That's the whole story right there. Those are the facts right there. All right? You're not going to hear that in the media. You're going to hear rationalizations, explanations, and platitudes. But that right there is what happened. And a rational person would say that Israel has a right to defend itself from incoming missile attacks from a terrorist organization that routinely says it wants to kill all Jews. But our country is not being run by rational people. Take Ilhan Omar, for instance. You might remember her as the woman sleeping with her brother. She put this out the other day. It's available on Twitter. It says, "The violence in Israel and the Gaza Strip is spiraling out of control. Far-right ethno-nationalist Israeli leader Benjamin Netanyahu is now responsible for at least 1,505 casualties in Gaza, including 200 deaths, 59 of them children. He has leveled entire residential buildings, targeting journalists and civilians alike in direct violation of international law." I'm going to stop that right there, because what she's leaving out is that all of those buildings, the residential buildings, the buildings where journalists were, where civilians were legitimate military targets. Do you know why? It is because Hamas uses these buildings, uses schools, uses apartments to run their base of operations and to fire missiles from. They use their own civilians as targets, and then they shoot these missiles at other civilians, all right? They fired thousands of missiles into Israel, but guess what? There are hundreds of them that didn't make it that far, that actually landed in Gaza and killed and maimed their own people. And as far as the journalists go, this was a big deal last week, right? Israel targeted a building, demolished a building where journalists were based. You know who else was based there? Hamas. They were sharing the damn building. And it's important to note that no journalists were killed in that particular attack because Israel doesn't make a habit of needless or carelessly targeting civilians in the same way that Hamas does. No. These residential buildings that she mentions, Israel would call up these residential buildings. They would let them know in advance, we are bombing this place, get everyone out of there, right? They did the same thing for the building where the journalists were. That's why no journalists died. God. And he is doing so with direct funding and military assistance from the United States of America. At least 10 Israelis, including 2 children, have also been killed by indiscriminate Hamas rocket attacks. To be clear, this is also a war crime. I like how she waits until after she's put her political spin on it to delve into the casualties on the other side. It would be appalling for the Biden administration to go through with $735 million in precision-guided weaponry to Netanyahu without any strings attached in the wake of escalating violence and attacks on civilians. If this goes through, this will be seen as a green light for continued escalation and will undercut any attempts at brokering a ceasefire. Another thing that she fails to tell you in this letter is the precision-guided weaponry that she's referring to, that Israel's seeking funding from the U.S., that the U.S. is providing to Israel. That precision-guided weaponry is specifically for rearming the Iron Dome. Now, what is the Iron Dome? The Iron Dome is a purely defense-based weapon. It is Israelis' means. Essentially what this does is it shoots incoming missiles out of the sky before they can land on their targets in Israel. It does not fire missiles back into other territories. It specifically eliminates incoming missile fire. That is how Israel has kept their casualties low. That is why, despite the fact that Hamas has fired 3,700 missiles into Israel, why I think the Iron Dome is effective up to like 90%. That's why the casualties on the Israeli people is low right now. Okay? And Ilhan Omar is advocating for them to not be able to defend themselves from incoming missile attacks. And why is that? It's because Ilhan Omar is an anti-Semite, right? She is a radical anti-Semite, all right? And she sleeps with her brother. Not a very nice thing, okay? But, I don't want to give all the attention just to her. Maybe we should go to an actual Jew, right? I mean, Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, he's ethnically Jewish, right? Let's see what he's saying on this matter. He tweeted out, "The devastation in Gaza is unconscionable. We must urge an immediate ceasefire. The killing of Palestinians and Israelis must end. We must also take a hard look at nearly $4 billion a year in military aid to Israel. It is illegal for U.S. aid to support human rights violations." Are you freaking kidding me? Human rights violations? No. Why don't we read some articles from the Hamas Charter and see who sounds like they are more likely to be the human rights violators here. All right, here we go. Israel, by virtue of its being Jewish and of having a Jewish population, defies Islam and the Muslims. Hamas Charter, Article 28. The Islamic resistance movement aspires to realize the promise of Allah no matter how long it takes. The Prophet, Allah's prayers and peace be upon him, says, "The hour of judgment shall not come until the Muslims fight the Jews and kill them, so that the Jews hide behind trees and stones, and each tree and stone will say, 'O Muslim, O servant of Allah, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him,' except for the Garkad tree, for it is the tree of the Jews." Hamas Charter, Article 7. Hamas and pro-Palestinian supporters, the ones that you saw committing these horrible anti-Semitic crimes, they are not saying we're opposing the Israeli government. This isn't a matter of being against a particular state or the people running that state. This is specifically against Jewish people. Those pro-Palestinian supporters, they weren't screaming, down with Israel. They were screaming death to Jews. They were spitting on Jews because they were Jewish, not because they hailed from Israel. Okay? That is what this is about. And I don't like black and white comparisons. I get that there is a lot of gray out there, okay? I do. But this particular matter, this is not one of them. If you are supporting Palestine, if you are supporting Hamas on this particular topic right now, you fall into one of two categories. You are out there, I'm not saying this to be insulting, all right? Category 1, you're just ignorant, okay? You're just ignorant. You didn't know that Hamas is democratically elected to lead Palestine. You didn't know that Hamas seeks to eradicate the Jews, as their own charter states. You didn't know that they fired thousands of missiles in an unprovoked act of aggression against Israel. You didn't know any of that, right? And you didn't know that pro-Palestinians were the ones committing these anti-Semitic crimes right now, not white supremacists, right? So that's category one. You're just ignorant, okay? Category two, you knew all of that, and you're either okay with it, or you're not really okay with it, but you're willing to turn a blind eye. If you are in category two, let me be clear. The Bible's real clear about to judge a man's heart is up to God, okay? I get that. I can judge your actions, and your actions right now, to take a stance with any person or group that propagates genocidal rhetoric and then actively tries to achieve that rhetoric, to side with anybody doing that is an act of evil itself, period. Okay? Hamas wants to eradicate the Jews. Hamas is trying to eradicate the Jews. And they're starting by trying to undermine the Israeli government. And they're doing that with the help of the media and local politicians like Ilhan Omar, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, right? There is a lot of anti-Semitism in our own damn country, and nobody in power right now seems to be speaking up against it. Rather, they seem to be speaking for it. Anti-Semitism is bad. And the fact that I even have to say that is insane. It's insane. But this is the world we live in right now. So how do we address that? By calling it what it is. You know, I think that the far left has really relied on conservative politeness for too damn long. The far left recognizes that there is power in naming things, right? And they will name you, me, anyone they don't like, all kinds of things, no matter how horrifying those names might be, no matter how untrue those names might be. But what's also true is that there's more power in naming things truthfully, right? So, if you see a politician openly supporting Hamas, call that person what they are, an anti-Semite. If you see a politician saying that white people are inherently guilty, whether they say that directly or infer it, call that person what they are, a racist, right? I get that using that language can be uncomfortable. It could be controversial, could be inappropriate, right? But we have got to start calling a spade when we see it. And this crap, this is disgusting, it is evil, and it has to stop, and good people have to speak up about it. And good people have to call out the morons who have been advocating for it. The only way for evil to truly win is for good people to do nothing. That's truer now than it's ever been. Oh, God. And in that spirit, we move forth.
Breaking news. New allegations surface against Governor Andrew Cuomo, and the accuser may just shock you. Tell us what happened.
Well, I went to meet with the governor at his office, to try and convince him, to stop sending COVID patients into nursing homes. I mean, I had an aunt in a nursing home. I wanted her to be safe. And, right out of the gate, he just straight up asked me about my sexual history. If I'd ever seen a man naked, if I ever wanted to.
Then what happened?
Well, then he started to get really aggressive, and try to touch me. And he did touch me in a sexual way.
Where did he touch you?
Everywhere. I told him I was going to go to the police, but he just said that he'd just defund the police.
Governor Cuomo, a real dirtbag.
Now in other news, the hit TV show Last Man Standing, starring Tim Allen, aired its series finale last Thursday. Now why is that significant? Well, it's significant because it was one of the only mainstream conservative TV shows out there. That's out there in the entertainment industry, so to speak. Now that's a problem, now that it's gone. There's no denying that society has shifted away from a core set of values that once used to unite us all in some way or another. If you were to wind the clocks back 60 years, you could walk down the streets of literally any city in America and be hard-pressed to find a business that was open on Sunday nights. You'd click on the TV and you'd see shows like I Love Lucy, or the Dick Van Dyke Show. Shows that were off-color in their time, for sure, but that ultimately preached, well, I won't say preached, but at least emphasized a core set of familial values, the nuclear family, so to speak. An emphasis on family, faith, friends. The things that have become fringe things to talk about or have present in our entertainment today. You look at the Oscars, for God, or the Grammys, rather, right? Cardi B out there performing simulated lesbian sex acts on stage singing the song WAP. If you don't know what WAP means, I'm not going to tell you because it's just disgusting, to say the least. You can look it up if you want to, but that's where our society is today. And I see it every single day out there in Savannah, okay? Savannah, it's a city filled with 20 and 30-year-olds who are just throwing themselves into these shallow relationships and these easy crutches. They are buying into a bill of goods that's being sold to them in literally every direction that they turn. Last Man Standing tried to sell a different bill of goods, an older bill of goods, an older set of values and ideas. And it's a damn shame that that's become such a rare thing in today's culture. It really is. You know, culture, politics is downstream of culture. And honestly, I'm gonna miss that show. It was really funny. If you have the opportunity, I highly recommend you checking it out. But that being said, I do have hope. I do have hope. I think that we are on the cusp of a conservative renaissance when it comes to entertainment. You know, if you look at Hollywood right now, you look at these major entertainment companies, they're suffering big time. The Oscars, the Academy Awards, the ratings were in the toilet. Saturday Night Live, for God's sakes, one of the most famous and successful TV shows in America since its inception in the 1970s. Its ratings are in the toilet. Why? It's because woke, as it turns out, isn't funny, it isn't entertaining, and it doesn't appeal to a broad group of people. Period. Right? Disney just lost $600 million in their last quarter. Why? Well, I mean, it's not... Well, it's for a number of reasons, really. A firing of Gina Carano really didn't help. Putting sensitivity warnings on the fricking Muppets might have had something to do with it, along with critical race theory that they were attempting to teach to their employees, or mandate to their employees. So yeah, these Hollywood types, they're hurting, for sure. There is a cost to wokeism in entertainment. And other people are starting to pick up the slack. The Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro's company, they've been expanding like crazy this past year, right? They released their first major motion picture, Run, Hide, Fight. I saw it. It was actually a pretty good film with some soft conservative undertones, for sure. And I know that they're working on a couple of other TV shows. And apparently they have a movie deal with Gina Carano, which is pretty cool. I know political commentator Tim Pool has announced that he's bankrolling short films, trying to enter into the entertainment sphere, so to speak, and combat wokeism, which is really great. I mean, we need more of that. We need more people stepping up and entering into the entertainment sphere with conservative values, with old values, or literally just any values that combat wokeism altogether, right? We need that in movies, we need that in TV shows, we need that in music. And I think we're starting to see a number of individuals in the creative field starting to step up in that capacity, which is really great. And we're not just seeing it in entertainment, we're also seeing it in politics. Mark McCluskey, you might remember him as the guy who kept a band of violent, thuggish BLM activists at bay off his property last summer, right? Basically, these big BLM activists literally tear down the gate to his private neighborhood, then storm the streets, and start to swarm his property. He and his wife come out with firearms and keep them at bay, keep them off their property, right? Meanwhile, they're screaming that they're going to kill his wife, they're going to kill his dog, they're going to burn his house to the ground, right? He says somebody took out 2 pistol magazines, clicked them together, and said, "You're next," right? All he did was keep them off his property, right? And for that, he was crucified in the media. Crucified, torn apart, left and right. As a bigot, as a racist, as this or that. Like I said, the left knows that there's power in naming things, right? Well, that guy, he is now running for the United States Senate. And good for him. We need Americans. We need real, everyday working Americans stepping up and stepping out and getting involved in entertainment and in politics, right? I mean, there's no denying that the Republican Party right now has a lot of spineless people in it. It's sad to say, but it's true. Look at Kristi Noem, right? Kristi Noem, she did a lot of good things during COVID. I will grant that to her any day of the week, hands down. She buckled under the transgender bill, all right? She is a perfect example of so many people in the Republican Party right now who are willing to go into the fight, but only up until a certain extent. We do not need people who are going to throw one punch, maybe two, maybe three, and then buckle and back out. We need people who are going to fight the fight and stay in the fight until the fighting's done. We need people like Ron DeSantis. We need people like what I suspect Mark McCluskey is. Somebody who is sick and damn tired of all of this nonsense and willing to step out and do the hard work and take the punches and throw them back. That is what we need. And I think that we're about to see a lot more of that. I am really hopeful of that. I truly am. But until that time comes, we need to prepare ourselves. We need to arm ourselves with information. We need to be prepared to get in the fight and know how to combat it, know how to identify the lies that are being preached to us, know how to combat those lies. Which is why tonight we invited a very special person here for the show. We invited PolitiFact employee and South Boston wannabe Patio Stool Sample to help us identify some of those lies and political rhetoric that you'll see in your entertainment medium.